Okay, I've really enjoyed doing these watermill in the springtime types of scenes, and I thought I would do it here on a photo stamping application. We have a photo of clouds here. You can download this for free off my Flickr site. I'll put an address for it in the description section. And we're going to stamp over the top of this photo print with just dye-based inks, okay? And I'm using the smaller version of the watermill just because this is a 4x6 print, and the scenes that I've been doing are on a half-page 8.5 by 5.5 size, so that size is just not going to be appropriate for the larger version of this mill, okay? Alright, so dye-based inks work really great on photo paper. The reason why I don't use photo paper on a lot of my scenes with a lot of ink blending, though, dye-based ink blending, is because the photo paper really dries very quickly, and it's kind of harder to blend in that style on here. But this one I'm going to be using less dye-based inks, if I use any, and it'll be more alcohol pen-based coloring, okay? Alright, so we have our Brook Falls here. It's still a fairly large stamp, and I will stamp that. I'm kind of looking at this part right here. If you're working with an unmounted stamp, it's a little bit easier, but I'm kind of having to look at the location of my waterfall, and I'm roughly going to stamp about 1/8 of an inch into the watermill impression image. Okay, plenty of pressure on the inside section of this stamp. There's a lot of surface area to this stamp design. Alright, and as you can see, dye-based inks work fine as far as impressions on photo paper. It probably even works better than glossy cardstock. Just in terms of the transfer, it's just because photo paper, it's that emulsion coating really dries very, very quickly for whatever inks that they are designed to take. They're really not designed for dye-based inks, but they work fine with them. Okay, now in my recent version of the watermill in the spring scene, I use this little portion of the Boulders with Lichen stamp just to have a foundation to stamp some additional trees on top of. Okay, I'm going to do the same colors that I did on that piece, and that's a dark brown and pink, okay? I'm going to add some dark brown into this tree. This is the maple pear. Okay. I'm just using the dark brown that I have. It's not like some kind of strategically chosen one. It's just the colors that I happen to have. These are Marvy brush markers, and they're very saturated and vibrant, and the brush tip right there, that fat brush tip, is a really good one to apply colors with. I'm going to mask off this rock a little bit. Okay, now when I mean a little bit, I'm going to have some of it showing down there. So you undermask, don't go all the way, don't mask completely the rock out, but have some of it showing, okay? If some of the tree goes over the rock, that's just fine. Okay, but that's better than having a bunch of gaps in between the design that you're supposed to be, represent something in back of something. Okay. Alright, so a little bit of brown, a little bit of pink. You could stamp this out in black, but this, I find that it's just easier, when you get to the coloring process, if you've already started off with the color that you're going to be representing on that imagery. Alright, so now I've kind of, I'm designing this around the cloud structures. I like to have the base of my waterfalls light. So I've positioned, this imagery around the lighter area of this, this cloud print. Okay. I think I need to re-ink my Marvy pen. These pens here, if it does have an accompanying stamp pad, then you can re-ink your pens with that re-inker fluid as well. My pen tips get a little frayed, but this pen is probably 25 years old, so, that's kind of to be expected. And this is getting real filled up with this composition very quickly. It's only 4 by 6 inches, so it stands to reason that it would be a quicker, faster scene than a half page, double the size, over double the size of this scene. And plus, since I've done this composition before, I really know what I'm doing. I'm not really needing to kind of invent here. I'm just kind of replicating, but doing it in just a different medium. Okay, so we have all that going on. So we have quite a bit going on in here, in relation to the half-page scene that I've done, and a lot of detail in here in terms of the structuring of the composition and variations in tones. Okay, now this is what I really have fun doing with the photo stamping technique here. I really like to just grab a lot of my pink alcohol pens. You could use like a La Plume or water-based pen as well. My preference for photo stamping is, alright, so a lot of pinks right here. Shuttle Art and Marvy La Plume Permanents. Okay, these are all alcohol-based. My preference is just for alcohol pens, just simply because the alcohol and the water-based dye ink that I stamp the impressions in and won't mix, so I don't have any smearing of the imagery when you put the alcohol applications over the top of the the water-based impressions. Okay, so I'm just kind of going around. I'm not coloring in everything with my pens. See, I'm kind of leaving some areas lighter up there. And that will hopefully resemble lighting on the trees in those areas, okay? And see, I'm just kind of mixing. I'm layering, but I think it's also physically mixing some of these alcohols. You put an alcohol pen mark down, and you color over with another alcohol pen, it's going to put that alcohol, previous alcohol application back into solution. Kind of like, it almost like melts it, and you know, you can kind of physically blend and spread out those inks. Now this one's pretty bright and it's pretty distinct. So what I usually like doing is I usually like going with a kind of a lighter tone, a lighter value of my inks that I'm using. Then I go to the darker one, but then I return to a lighter one. It could be the same one or a different pen. And then I go back in and I kind of blend out those applications, those previous applications. Sometimes it gets a little bit too dark, and I'm able to go in and lift, you know, some of that color that's already been laid down. See, that's really heavy in there, but it's kind of strategically done now. You can go back in there with a blender pen as well. Okay, let's see. Let me go with a really pale. This is a pale lilac. And let's get and blend in some of this right here. Okay, so I'll lift, see, I'm kind of lifting off some of that ink. And I'm doing it kind of on the top portions of some of these branches. You can see on the design how it's lighter on the tops of these branches, so that we have variation within the image. I like to have a lot of variation of lighting within an image. I like variation of texture. I like different textural contrasts within an image too. You want your designs, whenever you're kind of looking at designs, that's what the types of things you want to look for. You want to look for variation, and when you have images that are inherently varied and have a nice range to them, it really gives you a head start in making kind of a nice, rich visual statement in the application of those designs. Okay, if it doesn't exist on there, it's kind of left to you to have to apply. But in my mind, if that can be done in the imagery itself, it's just so much easier. Okay, this is a camel. What's the color of this thing? It's just, I grabbed it because it was a light kind of tan brown. I thought it'd be a good color for the watermill. I don't want things too dark, you know, because I like to retain the imagery in the design itself, so I don't go too dark. This is a brownish gray. See on the side of this building where it's inherently darker in the design, I'm just going in here and toning it a little bit more. Maybe we can bring some of this into the rocks as well and give the rocks a little bit of body and mass. This is really fun types of coloring. It is a pretty quick method, you know, technique, you know, in photo stamping. It's certainly a lot of fun to do and to watch develop, and it really is. It's like, you know, going back and doing you know, like adult coloring or something like that. But there's a little bit more to it. I mean, you can do, you know, what I'm trying for is you know, controlling light and shade. This is a little bit of a elm green here. It's kind of a olive type of color. I don't like that though. So what I'm going to do is I'll go back into it with gray and I'll just blend that in. So it's not so yellowy green, but I can get a little bit of it down. It kind of looks like moss growing, you know, on the rocks. See, this is how I'm kind of going around this water right here, making the tone around the water a little bit darker. I can come in, this is gray here, so you can come in and hit your shadow areas on your mill. You can add some tone and shading underneath these trees, maybe the bottom side of some of these, you know, pink trees, you know, they put them in the shadows. this. Here's this rock down here. I can hit the shadows of that. Basically, what I'm getting at, you know, when I'm kind of scumbling around with this pen is that you don't have to color everything equally, you know. Like these are all rocks, but there is light and shadow on the rocks. So in some areas, leave them a little bit lighter like that. It looks like light is coming from above and hitting that rock. This is a pale yellow. It's almost, and look at this. See, I can apply some of this down, and it's removing some of that ink. So if I've gone too dark, you can just kind of put that ink back into solution and blend it out. Let's add a little bit of this to this mill. See, it's acting like an eraser, but I'm not doing that exactly. You know, I'm kind of putting little dots. Sometimes when you do these little, you color back into alcohol markers, that you get that little kind of separation of it, and then you get this kind of rim around that, and it looks like kind of this watercolor type of buildup, you know, where you get that ring and it's darker on that ring and lighter on the center. I like that. I try to go for that and utilize it as texture. Okay, let's see. Let's get into some of these darker grays right here. Okay. And let's hit some of this down here in the shadows. This one's way too dark, but I can blend it out, right? And just adding some of this down. You can't do this on glossy cards. Well, you can a little bit on glossy. You certainly can't do this on matte. See this right here where it's really hard and set? You just kind of go in and you just kind of blend that out a little bit, like so. Now see, this is still working with a fairly dark gray, so you come into it with a darker gray, or, I don't know, let's add some blue. This is a very pale blue, right? And let's start adding some little bit of bluish tinge in some of these areas, okay? This blue is almost white, so it's barely visible. It's a good one to go with, though, because it is so light, and it provides us with a kind of an introduction of that color in that area. Let's go with a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit more distinct. It's a little bit different on matte paper because it's soaking in immediately. This one right here, it's just kind of, it looks a lot more pale because it is being applied over the top of all these other colors as well. I'm putting some in these rocks as well. You put it here and there, you know, just for a little bit of that different color. Tinge. It's kind of like a temperature change. You put in a little bit of blue here and there. Let's take a blender pen. This one just has clear liquid in it, you know, for the blending of all, you know, different things. It's really kind of dissolving, kind of the ink that you've already laid down, but it's also spreading it around. So I really like. A lot of people have to have like they don't. I don't know why texture is like turned into a bad thing. You know, so people are applying color with their pens, and they say, "Oh, it doesn't look flat." Well, flatness in art can look good in some areas, but it's kind of better if it's kind of contrasted against texture. Texture is such a major element in, you know, visual language. I'm not quite sure where kind of the absence of texture with alcohol pens really became kind of a selling point, or something. Like, see, for example, like down here in that water, see, that texture down there I find really nice. It has this almost watercolory effect, right? Now, I could go, you know, in a glossy cardstock, I could go for, you know, a real smooth, absolutely smooth application, but I think that looks better to have it varied, you know, than just absolutely flat. Flat could be just, you know, it's like taking a cutout of a piece of paper or something like that, and, you know, applying it down instead of having, you know, the hand of the artist, you, showing, you know. It's just like, you don't want any gesture at all, you know, in like a signature or something like that, you know, but that wouldn't be set. So why would you want it? The absence of any kind of character in your artwork. You know, that's something that's supposed to be the most kind of expression, you know, one of the highest degrees of expression. I don't know, I'm going off on this tangent, but I don't know, it's always kind of puzzling to me. Okay, so we have all this pink in our surrounding areas, you know, due to those trees. Let's go in and let's have that same hue reflecting off some of our rocks, okay? So, going in and bringing some of this pink into these areas. Light hits certain objects in a certain way, and it reflects it into the surrounding area, right? So, if I had like a yellow shirt right here, and light was hitting it right here, it would be reflected down on this white paper, and this white paper would have some of that reddish tinge to it. Okay, so that's what I'm doing right here. I'm adding some of this little pinkish tinge on these rocks. You know, this area is so kind of dominant, you know, with that hue, that spring hue. I think it looked good down here, you know, in these, the water. I'm just kind of putting these little droplets down here like this. And it's kind of spreading out. Okay, let's see that right down there in that water. And again, I can kind of go back in and I can spread that out too with my blender brush or marker as well. So we can go back in here. See, it's just kind of this never-ending kind of a, you know, dialogue. I mean, you could, or you can just apply it and leave it. I kind of like it, but let's just test this out in a couple areas like this. Okay, you have that churning water at the base of the waterfall like that. Okay, see that right down there? I really like that kind of watercolory effect down there. And when you look at it like this, it's not super apparent, but then you get closer and closer and closer like that. And those are the types of things, the types of details that I always mention this in the videos, but you kind of reward your viewer or your recipient of your card for their further, closer inspection of the artwork you send them. You know, there's something else in there. In that case, it happens to be this kind of textural variety that you give to your viewer by doing those little types of details like that. And the details too, like I said, you know, when you're holding it up at arm's distance, it's not quite as apparent, but I do believe that cumulative effect of those types of little details in your piece really add up to you know, something greater than the sum of its kind of parts, as they say. Okay, so let's go in here. Let's go with our pigment ink. I love pigment ink in photo stamping. The pigment ink really applies very nicely on photo paper. It kind of sticks to it a little bit faster and easier than on glossy cards. So glossy cardstock's more sealed. Okay, but this application, as much as I use it on glossy, it really works very, very well on photo paper. Okay, but that being said, it occurred to me that I really need to do this first here. Okay, so we have these paint pens right here. We have the Sharpie paint pen, pink, extra fine. It's a water-based pen. It's not like a Sharpie marker like, you know, the permanent black markers. This is a white paint pen. You can use your white gel pen. I'm kind of using these days. I find that this gel pen works really well. And one of the things I haven't been using enough are my Jelly Roll markers, okay? These Jelly Rolls by Sakura are really good markers. In terms of the longevity, they just last forever. All of mine are really flowing very, very nicely, okay? And they've been sitting around for like 20 years. Okay, I'm going to put this on its side just so I can get a closer-up view here. And you can see kind of what I'm doing, but I'm adding in these bright, real bright pink little blossoms on here in kind of a, I don't know, is it a sparse application? It's a targeted application of this, but I'm not coloring in the whole thing, but can you see the difference between this and this up here? Those little tiny bright little dots, let me see if I can zoom in here. Yeah, see that? Those little bright little dots like that in there? See how it kind of glows and stands out against that? Those are the types of little things that I find really fun to add into a piece. And again, that's one of those things, it's kind of a, if someone notices it, if they kind of, you know, you can get your card and kind of take a look like that. I mean, you can see it from a distance like this. It just kind of reads as, you know, kind of a general little, not a splash of color, like a pinhole bit of color, I guess, you know, when you're applying it in this kind of stippled type of manner like that. But that little type of thing really adds the sense of brightness up here, you know, to that area. Okay, and that, I totally forget about this, this kind of neon set. This one's called the Moonlight set right here. And I always forget to use it. I added some into my scene after I, you know, finished shooting that last video, just because I kind of forgot about it and I really like it and I wanted to finish that piece off even more. Okay, now this one is a very dull pastel color, so it's going to contrast against that real super bright neon version very nicely. So I like to have a little bit of both in there. I like to have a range. You know, we're talking about a range of intensity with color applications, dull and bright. This is a range of kind of detailed little embellishments that are really fun to do. Okay, so we have these little kind of lighter pastel dots in and around and over, in some cases, that neon looking jelly roll pen. I should get more of those jelly roll pens. Those are really fun. But see those little things of light? See, isn't it bringing that area to life a little bit more? I stamped those ones over the darker gray area, but this is a way to introduce lighting back into that darker area. Okay. A lot of times in rubber stamping, we just don't have the media to apply light into dark as much as we can go darker and darker and darker. Okay. With a lot. This is a way to go back in and to introduce, you know, these types of details, lighting details into a scene. It's textural details as well. Now see, what I'm doing is I'm going into this and adding some of these little petals, blossoms into my composition. Stands to reason that these petals would be kind of floating around on my and on rocks, you know, falling off. Okay, so like that. I don't know if you can see it here. Let me see if I can zoom in. You can see some of those little pink little dots. See these little dots all over my rocks right here? Here, here. You know, down here in the water, like that. Let's add a few more up here. This is fun stuff, so, you know, I don't know, add as much as you want. It's kind of about that, you know, those little tiny petals and, you know, cumulatively in those trees, but, you know, why not add, you know, quite a bit in there and have some fun with it. Okay, this is the white paint pen. These are really inexpensive pens, but you have to kind of buy them in a set of like 5. Okay, I'm kind of adding it into these trees on the top sides of the tree. These top sides of these clusters right in here. I'm putting the highlights on the top sides of those lighter areas, okay? And that way, you know, this white looks, you know, the little highlights like that. It looks like the lighting is kind of hitting it from above. Kind of makes it shimmer a little bit. It's like these little sparkling little bits of light. This is, when you put it down here in the water, it kind of becomes specular light. That's light that's brighter than white. And I'm trying to think if I've done splatter paint applications on photo stamping before. Let's go ahead and try it. I don't recall doing it. This scene's taking a little bit longer than I thought it would, because I wasn't going to do all these, like, the kitchen sink, you know, of applications in here. But why not? You know, it's a fun little piece. When am I ever going to stamp my watermill springtime photo stamping scene again? Probably, you know, not for a while. So I've got a lot of other things to try out. So if you're doing something and, you know, it's not going to be a composition that you're going to be doing again anytime too soon, you might as well take it as far as you want. So this is still kind of a semi-quick scene, though. Okay, so this is Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White. If you don't know, it's an opaque white watercolor paint. And let's try to get some of this splatter down here at the base of the waterfalls. I do have kind of a splattery type of texture drawn into the design itself, okay? But what we do is, after we've added all this color down here, we can reiterate this, and it looks a little bit more dimensional by having this other element in there. So if you can see it, is it splattering right down there? I'm trying to target it. It's going all everywhere too, but, and I'm just doing a couple little hairs at a time. You know, you can have pretty good control over where it goes, but I don't know. I don't have complete control though. Sometimes it goes over here, you know, or something like that. I don't know. It wasn't where I intended it. If you ever get it where you don't want it, you can easily just kind of wipe it off with a you know, paper towel or something. Alright, sometimes I like to give this whole thing a little bit of a textural spray as well. You know, I don't know if it makes any sense. From a logical standpoint, we can say that it's blossom petals in the air or something like that, you know, when they're kind of floating around like that. But from a textural standpoint, I think it's really nice and dynamic, okay? It's a very sharp addition into the scene. You know, we have these like sharp little, you know, very distinct little dots, as, you know, small as they are. Okay, let's get back to that pigment ink. Okay, 100% cotton ball, and we're going to add this into the scene. And I think that this technique here makes everything kind of look a little bit more dreamy in a scene by adding this kind of foggy application, okay? Now where you add this in is where light meets dark, all right? For the most part, okay? So let's start adding this in. I've dabbed it into my pigment ink, and I kind of dabbed it off here a little bit first before I take it into the scene. Otherwise it can be kind of blobby, and that's not what we want. We want very super faint and dry applications of this, okay? Think about it like applying powder into the scene, okay? That's the consistency we want. We want it to be like we're applying powder, not some kind of thick, slathery application of, you know, almost like white paint. See that right there? How soft that is, and, you know, look at it from a compositional standpoint, having that kind of textural change from very crisp areas to the very soft. Okay, let's put some around this rock as well. It kind of integrates the imagery into the scene too by encompassing them in this mist that's present, in the scene. See this right here? See, I mean, with each tapping, it's a very insignificant application of it, but cumulatively, when you do, 10 tappings with it or so, it really starts to build up and read. Doesn't it look like it's kind of glowing down there? Let's add some up in the upper falls area. Okay, see that right there? Just that little bit right in there. See where light meets dark? Putting it around that falling water, kind of making it look a little bit more misty and dreamy, dreamlike. Let's put some around these trees here. Let's put these trees in a little bit of that kind of foggy light. Okay. And we can put some up here as well. Kind of oscillate it. Don't put it everywhere. I find, that's a little bit too much. So if you kind of oscillate it, have some, like here in the trees, here's some at the base of the trees. It doesn't matter where it is, but just kind of checkerboard it. You have some, here, not, here, not, kind of, I don't know. Yeah, checkerboard it around a little bit. Okay, so adding some of this over here. Doesn't it feel like that mill is kind of set into the scene? It's a part of its environment now. It's not just on top of the card here. Now it's kind of inset into the piece. I really like that kind of essence. And like I said, the photo paper really takes this pigment ink really nice. Okay. So I like that glow here and there. It's kind of that misty glow. Okay, so let's add in a little bit of foreground. Now this is where I'd normally go with my VersaFine, but I find VersaFine black pigment ink does not dry on this photo paper very well at all. So let's just go back with my dye-based ink with the Marvy. The Marvy, I wouldn't typically recommend stamping it over the top of pigment ink, but that's what we have to go with, so we're going to do that. Okay, this is just the reeds here. Yeah, it's a little bit light in terms of the impression quality. Not my ideal, but I don't think that VersaFine's going to dry. But this is just, it's adding a little bit of foreground down there, like that. See, now we have something pretty close to us, in addition to kind of farther away. And let's go for another one up here. Maybe I'll hold this down a little bit longer, see if some of that ink will transfer a little bit more. The dye-based ink, too, the water-based ink, over the top of alcohol ink, too. Alcohol ink kind of seals off the surface of this. I mean, you can go with something like a StazOn or something like that. That would work. But I don't know. I'm not using specialized inks like that. But yeah, that worked. If I just kind of held that reed down a little bit longer, it's darker than this one over here. But over the that water over alcohol, it's just those two things don't mix. So that's a little bit of a lighter impression. It's still reasonably dark, but it could be darker ideally. Okay, so anyways, yeah. I tell you what, this is kind of a nighttime-ish looking scene. Let's add some stars up here. Where did my white pen go? I lost. Oh, here's my white pen. let's add a couple little stars up here. Okay, it's like something like that. Oh, yeah, can't see it. There you go. It's kind of like a dreamy type of scenario there, especially now with the night. All right. So anyway, I don't know, a pretty quick scene. Not the quickest, but you know, it's about half an hour's worth or so. This is a 40-minute mark right here, but I don't know, it was kind of devising and kind of coming up with things. So, all alcohol pen coloring, but I didn't have to do too much of it because a lot of it is already established, you know, with that grayish, purplish, you know, the background clouds on the photo stamping. So, I don't know, it's just another kind of methodology that you can apply to some of your existing compositions. One of the things that I would recommend doing, which I probably should have done when I was doing the other two previous scenes, was I stamped one on glossy, and then I did one on matte, and now this one's on, you know, a photo print. Maybe what I should do going forward, once in a while at least, is to just do, you know, the compositional layouts on each one of those surfaces, and then I'll finish them off in them all in a different video. And we can do a little comparison contrast types of things. But I don't know, the feel of these are all very similar because of the composition and the choice of colors. But the methodology, you know, it was slightly different, especially with the first one where it was, you know, predominantly colored in with dye-based inks, and I did use the alcohol ones on that. But the alcohol ink pens were largely used on the matte surface just because I wanted to, you know, go for a different kind of coloring methodology. And then there's where I've just, you know, changed over completely all to the, you know, the alcohol pens. But, you know, with the alcohol pens, just remember, you know, what we did on here, we were kind of working with multiple tones. You don't always have to just grab, okay, I want those trees pink, so I just grab one pink pen. If you have multiple ones or variations of it, like lavender, you know, use those ones, and then use your blending pens. And then, of course, you can see all the different colors up there using, you know, the Moonlight Jelly Roll pens. You can see the Sharpie pink up here. Do you see those three pretty distinct types of pink up here? You know, one's very bright and neon, one's kind of a pastel, and then one's white. With all those kind of harmonized nicely to create a varied but integrated textural range within those designs like that, and that gives it kind of, it adds to the visual richness of that of those areas and of the piece in general. And again, like, see down here, I've subdued a lot of those textural changes down here in the water by putting that white pigment ink over the top of it, but you can still see those variations down there in the water. I can see it a little bit more than you probably can on the camera, but, and then I've covered them over like that, but those little types of details like that in there, you know, are really the things that I really like in a piece. And those, I don't know, when I enjoy a piece in general, I'm not just talking about my pieces, but when I look at posters and professional artwork or whatever, if something kind of grabs my attention on the overall, you know, that's good because you have to get someone's attention to begin with. But in order to hold someone's attention, it's, you know, if you add little details of whatever type, you know, there's little textural changes in here or things that are going on in the water right around in there, those are the types of things that really hold my attention and kind of, they grab you upon repeated viewings, you know, where you can notice something, oh, here's that extra little thing, and oh, there's some stars up there, or something like that going on. Those are the types of things that really make a piece kind of fun and resonate on a kind of a longer term basis. Okay, so anyways, thanks for watching the video. I'll put, like I said, I'll put the links for the photograph that you can print out in the description section, and Thanks for tuning into the video lesson and the Stampscapes channel in general. Okay, so here's all the stuff right here. Okay, thanks again.